Old field habitats are not only important to gulls, but many other species as well. Old field habitats typically refer to former fields that were once maintained, often farmlands or pastures, that eventually the maintenance stopped and they progressed back into the forest. Old fields are typically characterized by herbs and grasses and other types of shrubbery, as well as goldenrods. Typically, there are very little trees, so there's very little moisture and less wind blockage, and typically that makes for a very stressful habitat for other plant species. Goldenrods are a member of the aster family and contain about 110 different species. They are herbaceous perennial species that are found in meadows, old fields, and roadsides. They typically have a yellow flower, and they're strong competitors in the plant world because they can suppress growth of competing plants using allochemicals. Due to their abundance, they're typically very attractive to herbivores. What we will be looking at today are called galls. Typically, these galls are like apple galls or ball galls. They're typically ping pong shaped and maybe even an apple shaped. They're very spherical. They're either golden brown or a little reddish. And they form on the rods of goldenrod plants. They are made from goldenrod gall flies. These flies will burrow into the goldenrod stem and then lay their eggs inside. After about 10 days, the eggs will hatch and the larva will eat its way deeper into the stem to create a feeding chamber, and the goldenrod will create a gall which forms around, even giving them more space and more nutrient for the larvae to feed off of. The larvae will stay in the gall over winter. During winter, the now mature inch-long fly larvae slows its metabolism and replaces much of its internal water with glycerol antifreeze. Larvae diapauses until spring, when warm days stimulate it to eat a narrow passageway radiating from its central chamber. The larvae stops tunneling just short of the outmost layer and then goes back to the main chamber to form a pupa. Adults emerge a few weeks busting through the thin-walled porthole. Adult goldenflies do not eat and last only 10 days, living only to mate and reproduce. Often, golden galls do not cause major growth or reproduction costs to the plant. However, because galls are living plant tissue that require nutrients, gall formation can be problematic when plants are young, or even if there are more than one gall or many galls on the same plant stem. Since galls are very common in old field systems and meadows, and because they're stationary and attached to a plant, they're very often easily targeted by parasites and parasitoids, and they're also predated by generalist birds. Specifically, some birds are like the downy woodpeckers, and they predate on these galls by dribbling through the wood and extracting the larvae. Chickadees are also a common predator. And then when we move to talk about parasitoids, wasps are often a big predator. They will penetrate the gall and lay eggs inside, and then the wasp larvae will hatch and then consume the gall fly larvae and then emerge in the spring. Since galls are formed by both fly larvae and the goldenrod plant itself, size of the galls can vary. Since selective pressures can change depending on habitat and natural selection, heritable traits can impact survival and reproduction of individuals, and the selection of gall size and environment can favor one type of predation over another, depending if wasps or birds are the main predators in that ecosystem. And that's actually the question we'll answer in lab today. Is there a selection of gall size? And we'll talk more about that whenever we get to the Arboretum on South Campus, but specifically, we will be talking about the question of do main predator birds or main predator wasps affect the gall size in the areas? Now we'll be talking about exploratory interactions, such as the galls and the birds and the wasps, that can cause interesting selection in species all over the world. And it's often a back and forth or a co-evolution between predator and prey. This can be shown in supervenomous ants, or a lizard shooting blood from their eyes. And there's actually a YouTube link at the bottom of this video and the bottom of the slides if you want to see that. And there's many, you'll hear about this in class, and there's many textbooks, and in your textbook specifically we'll talk about this as well. And then here you can see that this is also similar in tarantulas. And now we don't have a lot of tarantulas around here, but you can see they can carry up to thousands of their young. And tarantulas that manage to escape predation, starvation, and disease will pass on their genetics to the next generation, and this will continue influencing how this species of tarantula becomes better adapted to this environment.